Here.
Robin Meager,
Here.
Dennis Smith,
Here.
Tony Casada,
Here.
Mike Meyer.
Lord, we just thank you for this time and place. That we thank you that we can gather here to discuss the city's business. We pray for wisdom and that you will guide us. We pray all these things in your holy name. Amen. Join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Has everyone looked over the minutes?
Yes, I
Are
have.
there any additions, deletions, changes? Hearing none, do I have a motion? I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
I'll second.
I have 2 seconds. All right. Call the question, please. Oh, never mind. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you. All right. Before we get started, we're going to set some ground rules tonight. How many of you plan to speak? Okay. You will be able to speak for 3 minutes. You'll be under time. You'll come up, you'll tell us your name, and you'll tell us your address. I ask that you speak to the subject. If the person that has just spoken has said exactly the same thing that you're going to say, just say say dittos or something, all right? We don't need to be beating dead horses tonight. There's a lot of you that want to speak, and we want to get through it, and we want everybody to have a pleasant evening. So we'll try it like that, okay? And stick to the subject. If you get off the subject, I'm fairly well known for bringing you back to it. Okay? Are we all in agreement? Okay, great. Thank you very much. All right.
England style.
Okay. Agenda item, we don't have any, but we have some ordinances that we're going to discuss. Mr. Walker, would you like to help us out, please?
Yes, this first item has to do with the property at 1012 8th Street. You may recall this property was annexed into the city not too long ago. It was annexed in on October 12th, 2021, when the City Commission voted unanimously to bring the property in. But now that the property is within the limits of the city of Holly Hill, the applicant is requesting a small-scale future land use amendment from mixed-use Volusia County to general commercial Holly Hill, and a rezone from MH1, which was mobile home park in Volusia County, to CC1 commercial corridor. And this is because the property, when it transfers from the county, it has to come into the city and then receive our zoning and our future land use designation. So that is what the applicant is here to do. There is project information. The project information, there's a lot more detail in your staff report, and if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those with regard to any specifics. The property is approximately 1.25 acres. With regard to the zoning and land uses, the surrounding zonings and land uses are contained in a table called Zoning and Land Use Table. That is also part of the staff report. A site analysis was done for the property because in addition to criteria established in the comprehensive plan, the amendment has to be analyzed in terms of the infrastructure impacts. So one of the things that we do is we look at the property and we say, given its current future land use designation, if it were built out to the maximum extent possible, what would be the impacts to things like traffic, potable water, wastewater, solid waste? We need to know what those impacts are under the current future land use. And then we look at them under the future land use that's being requested. And we look at the difference. Now, in this case, the differences are that there would be a heavier draw on our potable water, on our sewer, on our infrastructure with the land use that's being requested as opposed to the existing one. So then the next question is, can we handle those differences? And we are able, as a city, to handle the differences that are caused by the increase in demand. With regard to traffic, interestingly, because the current future land use is mixed-use zone, which allows a variety of retail and commercial, and the one that's being asked for is also commercial, there's really no difference to impacts when it comes to traffic. One of the things to note is that in Exhibit G, there is a detailed analysis of the infrastructure impacts. But in Exhibit G, it does state that the proposed zoning is light industrial. However, the proposed zoning is CC1 commercial corridor, not light industrial. But the analysis is based on the future land use and not the zoning, and because of this, the analysis within the document is sound. One of the things that we're required to do when looking at a land use amendment is to see if it complies with what's called the urban sprawl rule. And that is in section 163.3177 6A9B of the Florida statutes. And it states that plan amendments have to be determined to discourage the proliferation of urban sprawl. And this amendment does not represent things like leapfrog development or premature development, which would put a strain on city services. And in general, it does promote the efficiency in the use of urban services. We also have to see if what they're requesting is consistent with all of the other aspects of the comprehensive plan. So we review the goals, the objectives, the policies of the comprehensive plan, and that was done. And we look to see if the proposed amendment to this proposed future land use map amendment is consistent with those. And the proposed request is consistent with the comprehensive plan. There is also a more detailed analysis showing specific policies and how the proposed amendment complies with those policies in your staff report. Then we look at the requested zoning and we say, is it reasonable? Well, the zoning category to the east abutting the parcel under review is CC1, commercial corridor, and the zoning categories immediately to the north and the south are industrial. And according to policy 1.1.3 of the future land use element, the CC1 zoning designation is consistent with the general commercial land use classification. So it's determined that the proposed zoning category is appropriate. So based on this, staff recommends adoption of the proposed ordinance enacting a small-scale future land use map amendment from MXZ mixed-use zone Volusia County to general commercial Holly Hill, and a second ordinance. It's recommended that a second ordinance be adopted for the proposed, or rather enacting a rezone from MH1 Mobile Home Park, Volusia County, to CC1 Commercial Corridor, Holly Hill, for approximately 1.25 acres located approximately 350 feet west of North Nova Road on the north side of 8th Street, and more specifically known as 1012 8th Street. That concludes my presentation.
Mr. Simpson, do we need to do that in 2 votes, or can we do it in 1?
Because you're dealing with one that's a policy issue, which is your future land use amendment, and one that is quasi-judicial, which is your rezoning, I'd recommend you do them in 2 different votes.
Mr. Bonrico, would you like to speak to this, or would you do it? Is there anyone here that would like to speak against it? Do I have a motion to recommend approval of the proposed ordinance enacting the small-scale future land use map amendment from MXZ mixed-use Volusia County to general commercial Holly Hill?
I'll make a motion to approve.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? Questions from Mr. Walker? Hearing none. Let's call the question, please.
Robin Hanger,
Yes.
Dennis Smith,
Yes.
Arthur Burns,
Yes.
Tony Casada,
Yes.
Mike Meyer.
Yes. I would entertain a motion to adopt the proposed ordinance enacting the rezone from MH1 Mobile Home Park, Volusia County, to CC1 Commercial Corridor, Holly Hill, for approximately 1.25 acres located approximately 350 feet west of Nova Road, north of north on the north side of 8th Street, and more specifically known as 1012 8th Street.
I'll make a motion.
I have the motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion? Please call the question.
Arthur Burns,
Yes.
Tony Casada,
Yes.
Robin Hanger,
Yes.
Dennis Smith,
Yes.
Mike Meyer.
Yes, motion passes. When will this
December 14th.
December 14th? Motion for recommendation passes. Thank you. I will move on to ordinance number 2. I've spoken with Mr. Walker earlier today because I had some questions about some things I didn't understand. And, I thought, yeah, my God, please. I'll figure it out before I can do. So, Mr. Walker and I spent about a half an hour on the phone, 40 minutes on the phone this morning, explaining those little things that I didn't understand, which maybe were a little more than little things. So, Mr. Walker agreed that he would do that for us as a group. Mr. Walker, would you do that, please?
Does he have to recuse himself, or?
Yes. Go ahead and you got to announce it, Robin?
I'm recusing myself from this ordinance. Number 2.
Go ahead and state why.
It involves property that I am under contract to purchase.
And he has submitted a voting conflict of interest form that's given to the clerk. That'll become part of the record, it's required by law.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, your
Can you
microphone
move
is
the
not
mic
pointed
towards you,
at you.
please?
I said, I'm sorry. And I gripe at people like that all the time before I got my bionic ears, and now I can hear, so.
Okay.
Floor is yours.
I thought it might be helpful to just quickly touch on the guiding documents that the city uses for development. It may help to kind of understand what's going on when we're talking about a comprehensive plan text amendment. The city, in fact, all development is guided by 2 documents. One is called the comprehensive plan, and the other one is called the city's land development code or land development regulations. Now, the land development code is different from the comprehensive plan. It implements the comprehensive plan. So, an example for the comprehensive plan might be that look at it as a guide, a general guide for future development in the city. It may say, for example, that all development along US 1 shall be non-residential. And it may also tell you how intense that non-residential can be. In other words, how much square footage can you put on a piece of property? How much non-residential square footage can you cram on there? And that's your intensity. It also addresses what areas are going to be residential, and it will say how many dwelling units per acre you can put on that piece of property, and that's your density. So it's very broad, and it represents the different land uses, commercial versus residential, on a colored map called a land use map or a future land use map. But when we say, for example, that along US 1, everything needs to be non-residential, what does that mean? A bookstore is non-residential, a donut shop is non-residential, so is an industrial oil refinery. So that's where the land development code comes into play. And the land development code contains guidelines for that development. And one of those guidelines is zoning. So it will then take that overall that non-residential title, and it will say commercial or retail, light industrial, heavy industrial. So now you can see what and where that non-residential development is going to go. It also deals with things like your setbacks. How far does a building have to be from a property line? How far away does your house have to be from your property line or from your neighbor's property line? How tall can your house be? How tall can a commercial building be? Buffers, what landscaping is required? All of these are the Land Development Code, which is simply implementing those general categories contained in the comprehensive plan. So tonight, we're not dealing with Land Development Code issues. We're not dealing with the zoning. We're not dealing with layout. We're not dealing with buffers, height, or any of those things. What we're dealing with is a comprehensive plan item. Now, our comprehensive plan doesn't have a category for RV parks. There is no land use for it. When you look through our comprehensive plan and you see commercial, residential, you look at that map, that colored map that represents the different areas where these developments would go, there is nothing that allows RV parks. And we don't want to simply say, okay, we're going to allow RV parks in all commercial, because if we do that, that means that it's a very broad stroke, and RV parks would now be allowed, or a person could come and arguably say, I should be allowed to put an RV park here because my land use is commercial. And everybody who has a commercial land use could make that same argument. So we don't want to have this broad stroke that just says that RV parks can go in a specific category. So the way that we address that is we add text in the comprehensive plan. We identify a very specific area, very specific parcels, and we say, for these specific parcels, an RV park would be allowed if a person wanted to come and pursue that use. So it's very specific. Now, as far as the layout and all of that, that still has to be addressed in the zoning, which is now a Land Development Code issue. So if the applicant is successful in getting the text amendment to allow an RV park in that area, when they come back, and what's part of this text amendment is that rezone, or the asking now to actually put the RV park there, has to be done by way of what's called a plan development. And a plan development is very specific. They have to provide a layout, they have to show buffers, they have to show distances from residential property, they have to show vegetation, they have to show how many RVs they want to put there, what buildings are going to go there. So that would be the rezone phase, and the city is very cognizant that people are looking for, are either afraid of this idea, or if it's going to be implemented, they want something that's going to be really nice. So that's what the plan development would look at when we do decide, or if this passes and the individual then moves forward with the rezone. Keep in mind that the vast majority of the acreage, almost 20 acres that we're talking about, already allows industrial use. Already. A person could come there and put warehouses and light industrial uses. So they're looking to do RV as an alternative. All right. So I hope that helps, just to, as I go into my presentation, to kind of understand what we're looking at.
Mr. Walker, could we clarify that they could come and do that and it would be there the next day because it wouldn't go before the commission or before us or before anyone? Is that what you're stating? If they had...
There would, yes. I mean, especially for the properties that already have that zone, most of it, the land use is industrial, and there are large parts that are already zoned for commercial and industrial. So yes, someone could come tomorrow, put a site plan in, and start putting in, warehouses or shops, mechanic shops and things like that. So, but there is a portion that's residential, and those are the properties along Tuscaloosa, the residential properties, and so that will be addressed as well. So this is a comprehensive plan major amendment called a text amendment, and it's to consider a text amendment to the city's comprehensive plan to allow recreational vehicle park, and that it be located on specific parcels having the wholesale, commercial, and industrial, as well as low-density residential future land uses. The parcels are located on the north side of Flomich, immediately west of the FEC Railroad and east of Tuscaloosa Avenue, and they're specifically identified by the property appraiser's office as 490 and 504 Flomich Street, and parcels identified as 424238, 020080, and 424238, 020010. Just to give a little bit of background, the city has been experiencing really positive growth in the field, specifically with our recreational type facilities. One example that we have is Pictona. It's a large, as many of you know, recreational facility that recently was completed. It's one of the largest dedicated pickleball facilities in the state. And with a second phase proposed to the facility, there'll be increased activity in the way of monthly and overnight tournaments. Now, the city already does host tournaments that cover several days and that involve hundreds of participants. And these bring in people from other areas. Many of them are in RVs and are looking for places where they can have these RVs established or parked. The city also hosts special events. Many of you may know that we have an annual overnight art show that brings artists from outside the area, and many of them arrive in recreational vehicles as well because they have their artwork and their equipment, and they also need a place to be able to have their RVs parked. So the overnight stays that occur because of the increased recreational tournament activity and special events, that's what's really generated the need for a local venue that can accommodate recreational vehicles for several days. We don't have that type of a venue, and we don't want people going to other cities in order to be able to participate in and be a part of the events here in our city, here in Holly Hill. So the city desires to have such a venue, but as I mentioned before, it does not have a land use that allows recreational vehicles. And we don't want to amend one of the current land uses to allow those parks, again, because anybody would then be able to put or request an RV park in that area. And it's not the city's desire to create a brand-new land use for that purpose either. So in order to address the need for a location that can serve as a recreational vehicle site, the city has encouraged the efforts of an applicant who has sought to identify a specific area and specific parcels that could be used for such a purpose. They've worked with the engineering firm Zev Cohen and Associates, and the applicant has come to the conclusion that the parcels that are outlined in Exhibit A are well suited for such a park. The site also has been analyzed in terms of facility impacts to the neighborhood, its ability to further the goals of the comprehensive plan, and its abilities to meet all of the requirements of the Volusia County Health Department. It's important that it meet the requirements of the Volusia County Health Department because the state plays a big part in regulating RV parks. So, as you probably know, that the entire site consists of 4 parcels, and according to the property appraiser's website, the acreage is, actually let me ask, Eleni, can you bring up a map of the properties, please? So the sizes of them are 9.23, and then we have 3 smaller ones, which are the ones on the west that are closer to Tuscaloosa. And they are 1.38, 0.92, and 2.07 for a total of 23.6 acres. Thank you. The largest parcel containing 19.23 acres has a future land use of wholesale, commercial, and industrial. And then the remaining parcels aggregate to 4.37 acres, and they have a future land use of low-density residential, which is a residential land use. The underlying future land uses are not being changed. The city is seeking a specific text amendment to the comprehensive plan that will permit the use of the recreational vehicle park as defined in Chapter 513 of the Florida statutes. And that definition for those statutes is also in the staff report on a sheet labeled definitions, and it's also in the agenda. Now, if the applicant seeks to develop the site as a recreational vehicle park, the site will be required to be rezoned via the plan development process in order to guarantee that specific performance measures such as adequate buffering from the adjacent neighborhood and the railroad are carried out. And it's not the greatest reading, but I will read the text or the proposed policy. It's policy 5.34, and it says, in order to provide parking and amenities for city and private events, tournaments, and other activities that generate economic benefit to the city, development of a recreational vehicle park area with amenities shall be permitted on parcel 4242-0428-0171, having a future land use of wholesale, commercial, and industrial, and parcels 4242-3802-0080 and 4242-3802-0010 and 4242-3801-0010, having a future land use of low-density, single-family residential. The development shall be a minimum of 20 acres in size, and development shall be limited to an FAR, which stands for floor area ratio, and that's a measurement of how intense, how much building can they put on the site. A floor area ratio of 1 would basically mean that if you had a building, if you had a property that was 5,000 square feet, your building could be 5,000 square feet. If it were 2, then you could have a building that is 5,000 square feet, but 2 stories. That way you could have 10,000 square feet on a 5,000 square foot parcel. So basically this one is 0.35, which is much less than what is currently permitted. Currently what's permitted is 1.95 on the commercial portion, not the residential portion, but on the commercial portion, which takes up the majority of the site. And it's allowed a maximum of 150 recreational vehicle sites. The development of the recreational vehicle park shall be reviewed and approved through the plan development rezone process. That process, they'll have to come back here to the Board of Planning and Appeals, then go to the City Commission for a first reading, and then go back to the City Commission for a second reading. All of that would be advertised. Some of you who got the letter, if you're within 300 feet of the property, you would get another letter. The property would be posted. So that's a process that you would also be involved in. The project information there is a sheet with project information that is in your staff report. Some of the things that it does show is that there are floodplains on the property, there are wetlands on the property, and environmentally, prior to the development, the applicant would be required to identify any known animals that inhabit the site that are listed as federal and state endangered species, threatened species, or species of concern, such as the gopher tortoise. Now, when it comes to the site analysis, although there's no request to change the future land use, the proposed amendment's been analyzed in terms of the infrastructure impacts. Again, we look at given the current future land use, industrial, and the low-density residential land uses, what would be the most impacts to water, sewer, traffic under the current land use? And although we're not changing the land use, we look to see what would be all of the greatest impacts if it were an RV park. And obviously, from industrial to RV park, the impacts are much less to water and traffic, to sewer and solid waste. With regard to consistency with the comprehensive plan, we did also review the goals, objectives, and policies of the comprehensive plan as a whole to determine if this proposed text amendment is consistent with the overall comprehensive plan. It is, but there is a more detailed analysis of specific policies and how the proposed amendment complies with those policies. Those are included in the staff report, but that report is also available online and is part of the agenda. So, staff recommends adoption of the proposed ordinance for a text amendment to the city's comprehensive plan to allow a recreational vehicle park on certain specific parcels identified by the property appraiser's office as parcels 424204, 280171, which is also known as 490 Flomet Street, 424238020080, 424238020010, and lastly 424238010010, which is also known as 504 Flomet Street, having a wholesale, commercial, and industrial and low-density residential future land uses, and request approval to transmit the said proposed ordinance to the Department of Economic Opportunity and related review agencies. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Walker. That was very thorough. Mr. Garrett, would you like to speak?
Yes, I would. Well, I'm excited to be here tonight. This is, I think, an exciting project, and let's get started. I'm going to speak as briefly as possible because I know you have a lot of questions. I know that there are some people in the audience that might have some questions. For the record, my name is Mark Corrett. I'm the planning director for Zev Cohen Associates. My professional address is 300 Interchange Boulevard, Ormond Beach, and I'm here tonight representing Robin Hanger, Rainer Martin, and the owners of the property, the Bishop family. This property in our office is referred to as Bishop's Dairy. We know it's a portion of what was the larger Bishop Dairy property. It's currently fallow now. In the last several years, though, we've looked at a variety of uses on this site that have ranged from industrial to affordable housing. But with Pictona's success, you've all heard in the paper that there's also been a significant grant that has been given to Pictona. That industrial investment is going to allow Pictona to develop to a size and a scale that it will be able to attract some of the largest tournaments in the country. So this proposal for an RV park seems a smart use of it in our perspective. Robin and Rainer's vision for the property is for a sports-oriented RV park. It will be upscale. It will have, clubhouse, pool, walking track. It's something that will be a credit to the community and certainly reflect well on Pictona and the other event venues in the city. It will allow Holly Hill to capture some of the local visitors so that they can, so they'll stay in town boosting restaurant and retail use. And so getting the specifics, you've heard some of this, but I do want to sort of go through it. You know, originally when we approached the city, we thought we would basically be amending the wholesale and commercial and industrial future land use to allow RV parks and then amend the low-density residential portion of it as part of a flume amendment. As we had those discussions with the city, they had, they expressed a great deal of interest in this RV park and this location, but they did express some concerns about opening it up, and you've already heard that. There's a number of vacant properties that are industrial, and essentially they didn't want to see that these things proliferating. So what we came up with was this site-specific amendment that will allow the city, the planning board, the BOPA, the city commission, a lot more control, because you'll be able to look at these site-specific parcels, apply these entitlements to these parcels and only these parcels, without opening it up to a greater proliferation of these uses. As you already heard, this is just the very first step. All you're approving is the use in this location, nowhere else. This isn't, you're not establishing yet the rules that will identify what the RV park will be, how it will specifically be controlled, and how what buffers will be created, what sort of amenities will be allowed to be present. All that will come forward in plan development rezoning. We are working with Robin and Rayner now to complete those plans. So this is not the end, this is the beginning. We'll come back to you at future meetings and present that plan and present the development agreement, which will essentially be site-specific zoning. And then once that is completed, we'll have to come back through for site plan approval. So nothing that occurs tonight is other than an indication of your recommendation to your governing body as to whether you think that this use is an appropriate use in this location. We certainly think it is. We're very excited about it, and we ask for your support. And we'll sit down now and answer your questions and any other questions that were put to us.
Does the board have any questions? Yes, sir. You're recognized.
Your presentation's good, but I haven't heard you say anything about a proposed number of units, spaces, whatever you would call it.
The future land use, in the staff report, there is a specific policy. It has a number of 150 RV units, and it had floor area ratio that you heard some discussion about, all of which is, much less than currently could be done on the property in terms of its intensity. And when you look at those 150 units, it generates far less traffic, far less water demand, far less solid waste, far less sanitary sewer demand than what's currently allowed under the property. And if we were to move forward with the industrial development that's currently allowed on the property, the step would be site plan approval. In terms of the actual number, we've set 150 in the comp plan amendment. We're designing it now. We'll be looking at all the site constraints. So, we've picked a number that will not be exceeded.
Thank you. More questions? Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Yes, ma'am. We will entertain some speakers now. So first, is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak for this? Will you please come forward? Ms.
Hi
Heidi,
there.
thank you. Will you tell us your name
I
and
am
address,
Heidi
please?
Heller of 460 Ridgewood Avenue. I'd like to thank you for allowing me the time to share a few of my thoughts. It's really nice that we have a lot of activities going on within the city with the Pictona and the art show, and just general relatives maybe coming in for an overnight stay, so that's nice. I do have one concern, though, and Mr. Walker mentioned it, as far as strain on city services. The staff report mentions that there's one entry on Flemish. How about opening up the, what's that road? Kansas, which is on the north side. It's been closed off. It looks like it's a private wooded road that the city has, but it's been closed off. Emergency services need multiple ways in, 150 sites, all those people. How about another way out for if there is an emergency within the compound or complex, that there is a way out besides Flemish? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Heidi. Yes, sir, please come forward. We're still speaking for.
Good evening. Gentlemen, ladies, how are you? My name is Jeff Prater. Live at 1308 Parkside Drive in Ormond Beach. I cannot believe you're even entertaining this. This is such a wonderful idea. I have a Class A 35-foot RV, very, very busy schedule. I don't have time to run to St. Augustine all the time. I don't have time to run to Titusville. When we RV, we spend money. We go to restaurants. We have a golf cart. We love staying in this community. If I get off on a Friday afternoon, by the time I get to St. Augustine at 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night, and I'm returning on Sunday, it's just not a fun trip. Here, I can bring my RV. I know it's going to be safe. I know it's going to be secure. And guess what we're going to do? We're going to relax. The average age of an RV owner is 55 to 74 years old. Guess what I'm in? I'm above that 55. And we like having fun. And I'm not talking playing music. We're in bed by 9 o'clock, 9:30 on the weekends. I'm sorry, it's realistic. We are not, you know, the average tent pop-up owner is 24 years old. We are not in that category. So I would love to see it. And it's going to be a nice park. I know it's going to be a nice park. So let's do the right thing and let's have some fun and keep everybody here in the community, and let's get some tax money here and employees. How many people, no one has brought up, and I didn't hear it, so I missed some of it. How many people are going to be employed by this park? We're going to get some tax revenue, some jobs, and have a good event. So I think it's going to be a great idea. So thank you.
Thank you very much. I can't see that. Yes, yes, right here. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I thought that was a person to the right of you, actually. No, you're fine. I was speaking to this lady.
Tina Lynch, I live at 500 Peacock Road. My father's property is at 501 Peacock, and he backs up to the RV park. What the lady was saying about the Kansas, that's not a possibility, because otherwise it'll dump all these RVs. I am an RV owner. I do go camping quite often, but it would dump it into our neighborhood. So you would have to either exit out on Calle Grande or on Flemish. So the Kansas thing is completely out of the situation. I do support the RV park under conditions. One, that they limit the length of time that people can stay there, so it doesn't become a permanent housing for people. Also, don't allow tent camping there, because as an RVer, I have gone to campgrounds that people make a home there. And you're more apt to get people making a home there with a tent. I used to work for the city of Holly Hill. I worked here for 11 and a half years. I worked for the city when Charleston House was being built, and we were told then, it's going to be affordable housing. No problems. Well, we all know what Charleston House has turned into. It's a crime-infested apartment complex. So,
Come to order.
if I had my choice between HUD housing and an RV park that's high class, I'm taking an RV park.
Okay.
And I butt up to the whole neighborhood, so that's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Kimberly Dibble. I live at 824 Lakewood in Holly Hill. I think the issue is that this has been out there for quite a while, and I know that you're talking about docks and stuff, if they've been made available to the community. You guys could say it's going to be a nice RV park and all that other stuff, but it sounds like we're changing the verbiage before we even know what we're even talking about putting in here, which I have a problem with. And as a prior real estate appraiser, an RV park, when we're going from R2, which is platted for 20 residential lots, to an RM3, which is plotted for 150 units, it's going to reduce our property values, and it's going to impact us.
Excuse me. We're still speaking for this issue. We're not speaking against it. I appreciate you coming up.
Thank you.
Not yet. Not yet. We're speaking for. Yes, ma'am.
Lynn Smith, 107 7th Street. I am glad to see that people did come out and attend the meeting and are going to be voicing their opinions. Usually that doesn't happen. But I will say in support of this, with the state regulating, the county regulating, and Holly Hill all having an eye on this project, I think most certainly that the owners will be held accountable to making this have some pretty high standards. And peripherally knowing the applicants and their businesses and how they keep them, I'm pretty sure there's no intention of anyone building a crappy park or allowing anything less than the high standards that they keep their businesses in now. And I can assume that any partners that they would partner with would have the same intent. I would also assume, as myself, that the crowd would prefer an aesthetically pleasing RV resort versus an industrial building or a warehouse on that property, which we don't need more of in this city. As the gentleman said, consider the revenue to the city businesses, and potentially the new businesses that will be attracted to our town because of this RV resort. Potentially more restaurants will come into town, and this will all generate additional revenue to the city and opportunities for the residents to enjoy, which we're all focused on, our own personal wants, and more restaurants, I think, would be good. And this resort may also be beneficial to residents who may have family coming to visit who own an RV, and they will be able to stay there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Hi, Snake Andrews, about the longest resident in the city of Holly Hill. I don't believe anybody's lived in Holly Hill longer than I have. I've seen a lot of changes take place, good and bad. A lot of them right here on these boards. I served on all of them. The question at hand, the property. I've been managing that property for the last 10 years. I've seen a lot of changes over there. I see things that not always that grateful to have to deal with, running people out of the woods, taking a body out of the woods. Some people made up permanent residents one time. But I will stand neutral because the proposals for the use of that land goes back into the late 60s when the News Journal wanted to move in there. It didn't take place because of the high tension lines with their equipment. Amtrak wanted to put a station in there. A record company wanted to go in there. I was concerned about traffic. An asphalt and concrete company was considered to go in there. Fortunately, the owner of the property has many times asked me what did I think about it. The one that I asked him emphatically, please don't do, was the low-income residents. Now, the people defending low income will say, it's not low income, it's affordable housing. Yes, it's affordable housing for low-income people. Nothing against people. But I know Charleston Place, me being involved with the police department, I know what takes place there. I didn't want to see that across the street from me. As far as an RV park or resort, you still park in a resort, I look out there at the Speedway when I go to the car shows, and I see the RV facility. They're extremely well manicured and maintained. It's one of those things, in my opinion, you won't know the end result until after it's done. Then is it too late? Now, if it takes as long to develop that property as it does to get through this meeting, we got nothing to worry about. I have to say, out of the alternatives that could go in there and that have been considered, my opinion only, the proposal at hand beats all the rest of the suggestions. I thank you for listening. And remember, I've lived in Holly Hill longer than anybody in Holly Hill.
See, time's up. Sit down, Snake. Yes, sir.
My name is Mike Inglet. I live in Port Orange. I'm third generation of four generations that have grown up in Holly Hill in the area. Gentleman there probably knows my grandfather from way back when. It was Obed Inglet, Pee Wee, off of used to the Honey, off of 8th Street. I'm also an RV owner. Got about a 40-foot fifth wheel. I retired a few years ago from the fire department. I meet with several people. We gather at different locations. They're church friends, and quite often up in Ormond. This would be a perfect opportunity to be a little closer to home. I think the impact would be great on the city in retail and restaurant type aspects. I've been to many parks. I actually been camping a couple times with Robin here, and from what I know of him, I think he's looking at doing a really nice facility. I'm pretty sure that'll turn out pretty nice for the area. I also do part-time work out of the Speedway, and yes, that place gets really crazy, and it's decently maintained. But they do a lot of tent camping, and that is where all the craziness occurs. Okay, so I agree with that. You know, tent camping is probably something you don't want to some degree, but. I think it's great. For me, it'll be perfect for meeting friends, and also when I have my kids from out of town that come down to visit me, it'd be a great place for them to be able to stay and visit also. So that's all I've got to say. And I've grown up in this town for about 25 years. The rest of the time was my dad in the military and a little bit out of town. All right. Thank you for...
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello, Alex Budzelik at 490 Eagle Drive. Is it possible, I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, but can you show that picture where it shows the parcel where it's yellow and purple? No, not, okay, that one right there, purple. That large triangle right there, that is my property. That is where my wife and I were able to purchase that land. I would say nobody loves nature more than I do. I'm such a nature buff. I just love it so much. I love being secluded, and I love being kind of to ourselves. It's such an amazing property. I love Florida. I'm a 6th generation Floridian. Grew up in Holly Hill my whole life. When me and my wife got married, we were ready to buy land anywhere. We just wanted land. And we found this beautiful piece of land right there where that's now our home. And I gotta say, this affects us directly, physically, more than most, but I will say I am so happy to be for Mr. Robin Hanger on this project. I would just like to speak on kind of the nature side of things. If you are here to combat this, I would just ask if you're wanting it to be preserved as the nature that it is right now, that's not exactly realistic. It's going to be bought up at some point. I think we've heard stories of that tonight where it could have been any number of things. So an RV park just sounds like such a better thing. Actually, this past weekend we were driving to Tampa on the other side of Florida, so we were able to see a lot of these types of things, these RV parks. And they just looked really nice, I gotta say. And from what I know of Robin Hanger, he likes to do things right. He likes to do things nice. And judging by Pictona and the things we see there, I think I'm even more excited for something like that to be right up next to my house. So I would obviously love it to be nothing forever, because right now it's almost like we have all of that. It's really enjoyable, but that's not realistic. So it's going to be something, and my vote is for the RV resort.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir.
Yes, my name's John Butterfield. I'm at 501 Peacock there. I own 3 lots of 300 feet that's going to join up to his property. But to answer the question with the lady of Kansas, when you go by my lot up there in the corner, Kansas is only 25 feet wide. You can't have a street there, you know, because he owns the other 25 feet. So, you know, I own most land except for Alex joining up to his property, and I'm in favor of the campground. I camp all over the United States, so. But Kansas is not an answer to it because it's a one-way road, but it can't go by my place. You know? Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak for? Yes, sir.
I'm Reiner Martins. I live at 1060 Ridgewood. It's across the street. It's called Pictona. I sleep in Ormond Beach, but I live over at Pictona. And I'm involved with Robin in the building of this RV park. I want you to know that. So this is going to be a fantastic place. It's going to bring a lot of people to Holly Hill. We get requests all the time from Pictona to, do we have space for RV parks? We were hoping to try to have that space, but we simply don't have the room. And there's a much greater demand than what we could have at Pictona. So I think you're going to see a lot of business that comes here. That's a very positive group. Our pickleball people, particularly older people who are RVers.
Don't look at me.
Oh, I didn't mean to look at you. They like to travel the country and visit various RV parks, and they're outstanding customers to have. We think this will just be a dynamite thing for Holly Hill, and I know it'll be a really quality project. I assure you of that.
Thank you, sir. Yes, sir.
My name is Chester Giles. I live in Daytona Beach, 213 Harpers Ferry. We're new to RVing ourselves in the last year and a half, 2 years. I heard the talk of the ruckus and the craziness at the RV parks. I don't believe Robin Hanger would have that kind of facility. So I would love to take my boys there. I think it's a great idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is John Garrett, 41-year resident of 537 Flomish. I have all kinds of concerns about this going in my neighborhood, our neighborhood. But today, when I printed out the staff report, I was shocked. I feel that the city has betrayed all the people that are here in the letter that was sent. The letter stated about an RV park, and now the proposed text that I've discovered today and I have in my hand says, in order to provide parking and amenities for city and private events and tournaments.
Mr. Garrett, we are still speaking for. We're not speaking against yet. So you are premature. You will need to sit down. Thank you.
Okay. Can I get a clarification?
No, sir, you may sit down at this moment. Thank you. You know, you can't run a meeting like this with this many people, with all you folks that want to speak, and not try to be orderly. So if I ask you to do something, I'm asking you politely, but when I ask, it's a request, and it's not personal, sir. It's just that's what we're doing, and we may be done. Is there anyone else that would like to speak for it? Yes, sir. Well, we're not quite done.
Good evening, folks. My name is Mark Madden. My wife and I are the owners of Madden's Ace Hardware here. We started our business here about 15 years ago. At first, we didn't want anything to do with Holly Hill. We heard too many bad stories about it. But we did give in, and we started our business. We've now got 6 hardware stores, and this is the absolute best producing store we have. We love this town. It's been very good to us. As a matter of fact, we live in Breakaway Trails in Ormond Beach. We're putting our home up for sale. We just bought a couple of acres on Daytona Ave behind our store, and we will be building a home there. This is a great little city. We love it, and we want to see it continue. I've known Mr. Hanger for several years. My wife and I have recently started RVing with him and some other folks, traveling around the state and up to North Carolina, where we have 3 other businesses. RVers are, like the other gentleman said, 55 to 70-year-old people. I'm not talking about the tent people. I'm talking about the RVers. They spend a lot of money. They're first-class people. I've heard a lot of comments from people about a mobile home park. That's not going to be a mobile home park that Robin is looking to develop. It will be a first-class RV resort. Like a few other people said, anything Robin does, he does first class. You can go by his property there and see it any time. It's beautiful. He takes pride in what he does, just as my wife and I do with our business. And I'm all for it. I'm behind him all the way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Madden. Anyone else speaking for? All right. Now we will entertain speakers against. Please come up.
Good evening. My name is Jason Clavette. I live on 1586 Tuscaloosa Avenue. I guess we're kind of making the amendments and ordinance up as we go because there's nothing in existence. I had a bunch of ordinances and laws that you already had for the land development, but they're in no effect now. It was with storage of petroleum, just nuisance, especially with traffic. I know there's a Christian school that's right down the street. There's the Holly Hill School right there too. Kids walk up and down that street all the time. What about golf carts? Are they going to be coming in with the RVs? I know we say 55 to 60-year-olds, they go to bed at 9. But there's also bikers. What about Bike Week? Is the bike going to come in with RVs? And I'm against it. I wish I could speak on the ordinances, but they're of no concern right now. And sports and things, as time goes on, things change. You know, it's shuffleboard, bowling. My wife's a website designer for Hammock Dunes. And paddle, the big tennis racket thing just started a few years ago, probably within 3-4 years. And it's a big fad, it's coming on now. But when that dies out, what's going to happen to this great RV park? I'm just for or against it. I own a few houses on Tuscaloosa as well. Worried about property value. If you went door to door, the people that live in the area, they would probably say no, they would be against it. Fortunately, I was able to get off work. I'm an independent contractor. So I actually came home to go to this meeting here and just voice my opinion. Most people that are for it aren't going to live right next to it, but I could actually see it from my house. I guess it would be positive for Holly Hill, but it just needs to be somewhere else. I mean, maybe instead of the expansion of Pictonia, maybe the expansion part could be where the RVs are parking. Just an idea, but yeah, thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Who's next? Yes, sir.
Hello, my name's Phil Larimore. I'm at 1581 Mobile Avenue, which is directly across from the area there. Ms. Clerk, could you pull up the flood map there? Besides, it sounds like you people are really on top of all the things that need to be looked at, the sewer and the traffic and all that, which are rather large vehicles. But right in the middle of this property is what was an extension of Thompson's Creek, which is started in Norman Beach. It ends up down at 11th Street, and it's a tidal type drainage area, which means when it rains and it's high tide in the river, that water goes nowhere. The back of my property has been flooded. I've lived there 25 years. The back of my property has been flooded about 8 times just with normal rainfall. When you get the big storms, we've had fish in the yard. So there's a lot of concern about how the land will change. You know, you have ordinances to say that the buildings have to be so far above the road crown. You have ordinances that say, you know, you have to have retention areas, but that is a tidal area. You can't pump that water anywhere. So it's real important that we look at all the small details as we go through this to, especially the homes on the east side of Mobile Avenue, back up to that canal, and every one of them's had their backyard flooded when we get a storm or something over there. So I really think it is a good thing for Holly Hill, but I think it ought to be looked, every little piece of it ought to be looked at step by step.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Barbara Osborne. I live at 521 Peacock Road, and I also own the house at 525 Peacock Road. Back of my property joins up to Kansas, where they were talking about wanting to see if that could be an outlet for the RVs to go through. Like we were discussing, You can't put anything on that property right there because it's unbuildable except for maybe a storage unit or something like that, but it floods. The rainstorm that we just had this last month rained one day, and that whole property back there was flooded, 5 lots. Flomish Avenue, right against where the recycle plant is, floods. I seen it. 5 days worth of rain. You couldn't even go through there with a pickup truck. Where's all that water going to go? How is this little road of Flomish going to handle RVs coming through there? Because that road isn't all that great either. I mean, especially right there by the recycle plant. As soon as it rains, right there at the culvert, you can't even get through there. It floods. So, like the gentleman said, it needs to be looked at as to how we're going to disperse this water, because once that goes in there, where's all the water going to go? The rest of us are all going to get flooded, and us little peons that we are, our insurance isn't going to cover us because we're not in a flood zone. So, like the gentleman said, we need to look at all the aspects as to where we're going to put the water, because Mother Nature is Mother Nature. And they don't have a rule for that, saying, hey, don't go over here. We need to stay over on this side. That's not the way Mother Nature's work. I would rather have the RV park there than I would to have low housing, because our property values are going to be in the toilet. And I don't want that. I've lived there for 20-something years. I love this area. That's why we moved here. And I was hesitant to move here because it was Holly Hill. You always hear the things, oh, you live in Holy Hell. I live in a very nice neighborhood. We all look out for each other in that neighborhood. The doors go down at 8 and 9 o'clock. We don't bother nobody. We all try to stick together in this neighborhood. And that's the way it should be. But I don't want the riffraff in my backyard. There needs to be a privacy fence or something up to where it kind of helps that, because right now with that clearing, I can see Flomish from my backyard. So please, I'm all for trying to bring jobs and whatnot there, and I wouldn't want, for that, but please, somebody look into that before they start. I mean, this man don't want to put all this money into this RV park and have it flooded underwater. He needs to look at that before they decide, what they're going to do. And I thank you for your time.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Who's in charge here, Mr.?
Are you going to ask Mike?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening. My name's Ariel Kavanaugh. I live at 1511 Decatur Avenue, Holly Hill. I live a quarter mile from the properties in question tonight. I'm here tonight to express my concern about the recreational vehicle park off Flomish Street. My family owns a fifth wheel and we go camping a lot. I have most of my life. The property entrance is about 200 feet from the railroad tracks. US 1 is about 900 feet that has, a traffic light there that stops people from the railroad tracks. RVs range from 26 feet to about 26 feet to 45 feet longer if towing another vehicle, such as a car or a golf cart or a motorcycle or another trailer. And I believe there's a road hazard and danger to these large RVs entering and exiting 200 feet from the railroad tracks. Please think about the large vehicle traffic that already exists on Flomish between our Holly Hill school buses that are 40 feet long, semi-trucks that are about 72 feet long, entering and exiting the US 1 and State Street. The scrap metal collectors and their trailers already sit on and near Flomish multiple times a week on collection days with 17-foot pickup trucks and 6 to 10-foot trailers. If you allow this to be used as a park, you will be, I believe, creating more of a dangerous situation for the people that already live here or for the campers themselves. I'm concerned about the addition of weight that they will bring to our roads. In addition to our roadway safety, I'm also concerned about the following issues: usage of our shared resources, generators, noise, enough power to run all the equipment, crime, vehicle fuel runoff into the canal off of that property. RVs should not be using our residential roads to cut through to get to the RV park, but that's what will happen if the main road is closed due to an accident, which happens frequently right there by 7-Eleven and all that stuff. It's constantly having a wreck. Or flooding, which also constantly happens at that intersection, and you can't leave out that way. Please don't allow this land to be used as an RV park or a campground. And I also wanted to mention that I also do the Holly Hill Eco Friends thing, and I clean out the water goat every week. And so I look out for the LPGA canal, and all of those waterways are connected, and I am concerned about the wildlife and the wetland and how it absorbs water currently. And once we build on it, I don't think we can undo it, and I'm fearful that there will be repercussions for building on that and allowing it possibly to flood. I think some other people already spoke that it does flood. They live right there. Thank you.
Thank you. We're speaking against, Snake. You're going to get up and speak against now?
Yeah.
No, you're not.
Mr. Chairman, 30 seconds, please.
No, sir. Sorry. Is there anyone else to speak against?
Guy with the hat?
Come to order. If the gentleman would like to stand up to speak, he can do it on his own. If he doesn't, that's not my problem, it's not your problem. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against? This is my last call. All right, then come forward. You have about a minute and a half remaining.
Well, you didn't let me finish before.
That's why you have a minute and a half.
I think it's wonderful that so many
Repeat
of
your name,
Robin's...
please.
My name is Kimberly Dibble. I live at 824 Lakewood in Holly
Thank you.
Hill.
Thank you.
And I am an RV owner, as Brian knows. My RV is sitting right there, and I do it all the time. And I think it's wonderful that so many of Robin's friends have come up here to speak for him that do not live in Holly Hill. But as a prior real estate appraiser, it is going to bring down our property values. When we look at changing property from R2, that there's 20 platted lands to RM for travel trailer park campsites, it's 150 units. I hear, this is the first step, okay? I don't understand why we don't have plans and everything in place. This is the first step. Once it starts, and everybody, the wave will start, and we'll just start go. I don't know, with that road, there's no way it can handle RVs. Who's going to pay for the infrastructure enhancements? Is that part of the plans? And part of the reason the community is upset right now is because there's nothing out there. We keep hearing what a wonderful place this is going to be. Nobody knows what it's going to be. That's all hearsay. And as for it bringing stuff into the community, I'm sure Madden's Hardware will get a lot of business from RV people. I'm sure he'll have a big RV section in there. However, I sat in here with commissioners 2 weeks ago who said they couldn't even find a restaurant to take people to after the parade. That part of that property is commercial. Why aren't we doing something to get more commercial properties in there
time is
that
up.
residents can use?
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against?
My name's Debbie Griffin. I live at 1613 Decatur Avenue, and I need to know how much of the funding Holly Hill's going to contribute towards this, because my yard floods every time it rains. It's like a lake, and a river flows down my road, and I've asked for 20 years to get sewers put on my street, and they say they don't have the money for that. Every commissioner, when they used to vote at the UBIC church, they'd sit outside, "Oh, I'll help you if you vote for me." So I vote for everybody, and then I've never had help in 20 years, and my yard floods bad. I'm the one with the sandbags all the way down the whole road to keep the water out, but it doesn't do any good because it still flows in there. So if they're gonna fork out a lot of money to help this RV park, you need to get the sewers straightened out on the streets that are up the road from there, on Decatur to the dead end side, Tuscaloosa on the dead end side. They all flood bad. So you need to fix that before you start sending money somewhere else. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone else to speak against? I would entertain a motion to approve the staff recommendation. Staff recommends adoption of the proposed ordinance for a text amendment to the city's comprehensive plan to allow a recreational vehicle park on certain specific parcels identified by the property appraiser's office as parcels 424204280171, also known as 490 Flomet Street, 424238020080, 424238020010, and 424238010010, also known as 504 Flomet Street, having the wholesale commercial, industrial, low-density residential future land uses, and request approval to transmit said proposed ordinance to the Department of Economic Opportunity and related review agencies. Do I have a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
if there are no objections, I would like to...
Yes, sir, I have an objection. I'm talking to my board now. You may sit down.
Okay,
Thank you. Do I have a motion?
Do we get to ask questions after the motion or?
That's
before
when the
motion?
discussion comes up, Arthur.
I just want to make
The
sure.
floor will be open. You will be open.
I'll make a motion so that we can discuss it.
So you make a motion
I'm
to
making a
approve the
motion to
recommendation.
approve so that we can discuss it.
I'll
second a motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? You have a question?
Yes, sir.
The chair recognizes Arthur Burns.
Mr. Walker, some of the residents talk about flooding concerns, and I have some of those same concerns because whenever new construction goes in, they make you build at a higher level than some of the existing homes, and I'm very worried that some of that will go into the existing homes. I've heard people complain about the yards, but there's nothing we can do about the yards. If the water's getting into your house, then we have to worry about it. And so.
Come to order.
Can you give us some guidance on that?
Yes, and the concern that folks have is very understandable. When development takes place, it goes through agencies outside of us with regard to things like stormwater, handling of stormwater, the retention of stormwater. And specifically, there are eyes on property when that property is deemed to be in a special flood hazard area. So when this development occurs, one of the things that we have to make sure of is that there is what's called compensating storage. And this is when you want to do development that's within a place that's already flood prone. So the St. John's looks at it. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection, they need a permit for that. And we review it through engineering to make sure that that water is not dispersed. You can't, Florida statute does not allow you to develop property and then disperse that water onto other properties. So we require an engineering analysis and stormwater calculations that would be reviewed,
they'd have to hire an engineer that would have to prove that. And then the city hires an outside agency to review that engineering as well. So the concerns that the folks have, very understandable. I think anybody living there would be worried about that, but it does go through a very thorough review to make sure that the flood problem is not exacerbated. The other thing to keep in mind is at a 0.35 floor area ratio, the maximum development impact, if they were to develop at the maximum amount with this specific project, it would be 365,904 square feet approximately is what they would be able to do. The maximum amount of construction and development on that property. If they decided to do nothing but go right now and just submit a plan, they could build without any type of approval from this board or from the commission 1,698,840 square feet. So they are severely limiting the amount of development that they're able to do. And all of that development would be industrial. So you could have 18-wheelers coming up and down the road all day long. And that's what they have a right to do right now.
Right.
And those flooding issues would still exist. They would still have to go through engineering review. But what they're looking to do with the property is much less intense than what they have a right to do with it right now.
I'd like to ask Mr. Corrad a question. Has your office done any calculations on the amount of impervious that this park will create? That is the land that the water does not go through, that the water runs off of.
That's what I wanted to talk about earlier. As was pointed out, it would be a shame if the applicants developed this property and had tremendous flood problems. So of course, they've asked us to analyze that now, in advance of them developing the property. So, as you've heard from your planner, there are requirements through St. John's that require compensating storage. What does that mean? It means if you're going to have impacts in the floodplain that are going to limit the floodplain's function, which is to store floodwaters, you have to compensate that. You have to provide compensating storage elsewhere on the site. So we've already done those calculations because that's a big component on whether you decide to move forward or not move forward with this property. It's a 25-acre, I'm rounding, it's 25 acres. We'll have over 9 acres of flood storage on the property. So if anybody's experiencing flooding problems now because floodwaters are exiting that property, they're going to be captured on site. This is a 25-acre property. We've designed a number of different RV parks. A property of this size, we could normally get a much greater number of RVs than is currently being proposed. One of the limiting factors on this site is the floodplain and the requirement to have, like I said, just over 9 acres of compensating storage.
Have you done a calculation for the number of nights that the RVs would actually be in place, the usage? Because you have 150 spaces. What do you anticipate the occupancy rate to be? Seriously.
On a year-round basis,
Year-round, yes, sir.
when you think about it, usually it's about 60%.
60%.
I know the owners would like it to be higher, at about 90.
Right. But that's the number I was wondering.
But usually, like when you do the traffic analysis, and you're looking at those numbers, you're using about a 60% figure.
Mr. Burns, did you have a question?
Yes, sir. Now, I'm not an RVer. It's been a while since I've been to an RV park, and I'm trying to get it in my head. You're going to have a lot less impervious surface? I mean, it's going to be, as I understand that, I mean, there'll be some roads that'll be paved, but are you going to try and keep everything woodsy, so to speak? I guess that might not be.
So there'll be roads, there'll be the pads. Essentially, there'll be building pads, but the rest of this property will be largely impervious. You're going to have a lot of area tied up in those 9 acres that I talked about was just for the compensating storage. You're not allowed to put the stormwater associated with the impervious surface into that compensating storage. So there'll be separate stormwater facilities on the property just to deal with the normal stormwater that you see on every site that's developed in the modern era. The direction that we've been given by Robin Rayner is that it's going to be lushly landscaped. There's going to be walking trails. There's going to be recreational activities. All that'll be, largely impervious.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
How big's the lake on the property going to be?
Well, that compensating storage, essentially what'll happen, current plan, where we're not done designing it, is that essentially that ditch, which was referred to earlier as Thompson Street, will essentially be expanded and dug out into that storage.
There will be a lake on the property, is my question.
Yes.
I'm sorry. And how big will that lake be? How many acres?
It'll be a
5,
good
3?
portion of that 9 acres.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Koretz. Yes, sir.
Mr. Walker, how many times will this need to come back here? This is not a final, yes, it's over and done. Am I correct?
No, the Board of Planning and Appeals is a recommending body to the City Commission. So this will go to the City Commission once for first reading, and then it will go again for second reading. And that would be handling just this text amendment. And then for the rezone, that whole item would come back here. All of these folks could attend, see a proposed layout, and then that also would go to 2 hearings before the City Commission.
Thank you, sir.
There may also be creating the zoning. Do we have the zoning? Does it exist?
Development.
Do we have a RV plan development? Or are we not going to create that?
We're going to create a plan.
Mr. Simmons, will you either speak in that?
I was just saying that we may also be creating a zoning district that it would be rezoned to. I don't know if we would or we wouldn't.
PD.
I know we have to do a PD, but do we have an existing one? If we have an existing one will work, then he'll rezone to an existing one.
Right.
But if we may also have another, I don't know if we'll need to create another one. But I think the important thing is here in the comments and questions, I just want to focus y'all back on the issue before you. It's the use. Is a RV park something that you four believe is a good idea for the community on that property? Flooding, honestly, it doesn't matter. Because you know why? I don't care what you build there, you're going to have flooding issues. You're going to have the same regulation, you're going to have to comply with the same things.
Sure.
You're going to have semi-trucks, but those are all things, as Mr. Walker explained, we're talking use now. When it gets down to our land development regulations and our zoning and our PD agreement that will have a detailed site plan outlining how it's going to lay out, the ingress egress point may move. It may not be 200 feet from the railroad tracks by the time they build it. You have to also bring in all the state regulations. This is a different than like if we do a residential subdivision, we have a lot of control. Our regulations are what control that. When you do an RV park, the state has significant regulations that come over this. So there's going to be all kind of regulations that get applied to this. And that will happen in due course. And what the applicant is doing, he's doing his due diligence to see if he wants to buy the property. The very first step is to say, well, can I even do what I want to do there? That's what we're asking. That's what's being requested of you. Do you think he should be allowed to do this use on the property? How he does that use will come back to you later. It's the use. That's it. That's the only question before you. Not flooding, not traffic, none of that stuff. And anybody can look at this and say, and based on what, Mr. Walker just gave to you, if the property got developed today with what's allowed without you ever seeing it again, it would be far more intrusive than what is being proposed. I mean, there's no way you can even debate that issue. It is not debatable. So they're really carving it down. Now, what's it going to actually look like? How's all it going to lay out? The traffic impact, that will all come in due time. But it's very expensive for the applicant because a planned development, you basically design your project as part of the zoning. You've seen the planned developments. It's a lot of work that they have to do. Somebody's just looking to buy the property and they don't even, the use is not allowed. This use is not allowed in this city. We have to create the use to be allowed. That's step one. No reasonable person would go and spend all the money planning something when the community doesn't even allow it. Step one is, will you allow me to pursue the use? Is this a use that y'all foresee as being beneficial to this community? That's the question before you tonight. We will get to flooding. We will get to traffic. All those issues. Where the site pads lay out, where the access points are, all that stuff will come in due time, but it's step two. Step one is, do you want the use allowed here? Because it's currently not allowed. That's the question before you. So I know I understand people want to talk about flooding, the traffic, all those type of impacts. That's going to occur regardless of the development. That's what I call the natural result of development. That is going to occur regardless of the particular use there. You are going to have to address all those issues, regardless of what type of use is there. What we are talking about here is, do you recommend this particular use, an RV park on this property would be a good change for the city? This is a policy decision. We're not talking about, is there substantial competent evidence? We're not in a quasi-judicial hearing. This is policy. We're setting policy to allow this particular use on this particular property, because currently we don't have RV park uses allowed in our city. That's a policy change for this city. Do you think it is a good policy change based on the parameters that Mr. Walker's proposing? On this particular site, we're saying this site only, max 150 units, and a .35 FAR, which is basically how much impervious surface can you have, and it's 35% of the whole site, more or less, 35% of the whole site, which right now they have almost 200% of the whole site, because they can go up higher. So that's the question before you. I just don't want you getting too sidetracked on development issues when we're not there yet. We will get there. They will come before you, and the presentation will be much longer about all the analysis that went in to make sure that what's being proposed meets all those concerns. It doesn't impact the neighbors in terms of flooding. What kind of buffers are there put up? What kind of protections are put up? What kind of landscaping is put up? Where's the ingress-egress point going to be? How big is the lake going to be? All that stuff will come to you in due time. It just can't be answered now, because the first question is, do you even want the city to entertain the use?
Okay.
That's what's before you.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. And we have a motion and a second before us for recommended approval. Is there any more discussion? Call the question, please.
Arthur Burns,
Yes.
Tony Casada,
Yes.
Dennis Smith,
Yes.
Mike Meyer.
Yes. Recommendation is approved. And the meeting is when?
We have two meetings in January. One is the 11th, and the other one is the 25th. This has to be, this will probably go to the 11th of January.
All right.
First
Thank you
meeting.
very much.
That will be the first reading before the city commission, but it's going to be, I'm going to try to schedule it for the 11th. It could be the 25th, so please just check on the website, the agenda. And if anything is unclear, feel free to just call me. You can call the planning department. My name is Brian Walker. Okay, absolutely. Sure.
Okay. Lost my, we have any old business? I don't know of any. You have any communications?
We have the schedule.
Hope you have a Merry Christmas.
Just I wanted to discuss the proposed schedule
Right.
for next year and just
We'll
have
do that.
you as a commission.
We'll have a short adjournment while we recess, while these folks leave.
Only concern is when the board does. When they should. They can get there. All in due time.
Are we done?
No,
No.
we're at, we have a
waiting
couple
for the
things to
room to
do.
quiet.
I'm just waiting for the den to settle down.
I know people would love for things to stay the way they are, but I ain't really.
All right, I'll call this meeting back to order. Brian, you have the schedule you want to discuss?
Yes, Chair, the schedule, I believe it was sent to all of the members, and this is so that next year, we do have a couple of holidays, and I know that some members do know when they're going to be going on vacation. So in general, I'd like to, as much as possible, get the calendar set for next year. It does take into account, I believe, our Labor Day weekend, is that right, Lynn?
Yes, and 4th of July.
And 4th of July. So this, that's up on the screen, is what was sent to all of you, and I'm just looking for the board to say, yes, this is what you would like as the calendar, adopted calendar for next year, or any changes that you'd like to see, and we can make those changes.
The last one's on Brian's birthday, so we should make that really long.
Boy, I don't like this.
I can't go past a month at a time, Brian, I'm sorry, you know, my plans change, so.
Understandable.
So, but this is kind of like the Pirates rules, right? It's more like suggestions.
I went to private school. Okay?
Okay. So anyone want to make any remark about it? Do you have a conflict?
No, till it gets here.
I don't see, exactly right. I don't see any conflicts until October, November, December, and then they come up later. So I won't know what they are. All right.
This is just to give us a general guideline. There may be things that come up. There are always unforeseen occurrences. Time and unforeseen occurrence befall us all. So, but if we could just get something down and we have a general idea, that's what we'll post for the public, and then if any changes come up, we'll do that.
Sounds good to me.
All right.
Is there anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So Chair, so you are okay with this as a board?
Tentatively?
Would you like
We
to
all
adopt
said,
it?
we all said, yeah, we're tentatively, we're best we can do with it.
Okay.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Okay, second. All right, doesn't require discussion. All in favor, please. Arthur, I want a word with you.
I don't think they do. I haven't seen it.
How are you? Not always.